Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk about how to break down ponds in late winter, early spring, how to find bass and to catch them. Alright, so first things first, if you have not checked out the video from last week, go and check it out. Pond fishing video. I caught the bass using these techniques that I'm going to tell you right now. And also, if you haven't watched the video before that one, I talked about breaking down ponds a little bit. Well, I talked about breaking down any body of water, no matter what you're on. But today we're going to specifically go into pond fishing this time of year. When I go pond fishing, I am covering water. So, first things first, we are still in late winter here. Pond's finally thawing. Look, you can see my breath here in the garage. It's freaking cold. Still 40-degree water temps. Late, like high 30s, low 40s. So number one, with pond fishing, generally all the time, I am just trying to cover water. I am not staying in a spot more than 5-10 minutes, really. Every time of the year, no matter what, any time of the year, no matter what, I am under the impression that fish in ponds are moving, and they are, really. To be honest with you, they're constantly just moving. They're not really going to stay in certain areas. Certain key structures, they will kind of group up and stay there a little bit, but a lot of times fish are just cruising. The only time that's different is when we get into like spawn time, which we are not even close to being there yet, so don't start thinking about that yet. But obviously then you'll see there's a lot of fish up on the bank making beds, spawning, guarding fry, doing all that stuff. Usually females pretty close to that. They're not moving as much, but they are still cruising. It's not like, even in ponds, well, especially in ponds, it's not like all the fish are gonna freaking spawn at the same time. Especially this time of year, they're just cruising. They're starting to get up, starting to get going. They're starting to think about that spawning time. Days are getting longer, but the water temps are still really cold. So it's kind of a strange time because they are getting into that mode, but the water's still freezing cold, so obviously they're not fully gonna start spawning yet. But they are going to be looking for bait. They're going to be trying to eat. They're going to be doing all those things. Their metabolism's finally going to start ramping up a little bit. And they're going to start just moving around. And then once we get warmer, then they'll start cruising for beds and doing all that stuff. But like I said, we're not in that mode yet. So covering water is usually a main thing. But this time of year, with the water temps being so cold, I'm actually going to slow down a little bit, still covering water of a pond. And I'm going to be trying to find depth changes. Okay, typically in a pond, your deepest water is going to be in the center of that frickin' pond, right? I mean, a lot of them are just dug out bowls, or if they're natural, it's just a bowl. I mean, most of the time. So I like to just stick to that, but I'm not just going to be casting it out to the center of that pond all the time and just hope something bites in the deeper water. That's why doing the fan casting is great, because you find that cover like I talked about when you're ticking the bottom, but you can also start to find ledges, things like that, weird little areas where maybe the river runs through something, if it's filled by a river or filled by pipes that are underground that they pump water into it sometimes, things like that. The water's going to be flowing through there and digging out a little deeper channel. So you're going to have ledges on that spot. Great things to find. Also, anytime you look at the bank and there's something that juts out a little bit, okay, so it's going to be the grass line along the bank. There's always something there where something's going to jut out. Maybe the grass just grows a little bit further right there. Whatever, just something that happened, mud getting blown onto that stuff, make kind of a hump, things like that. Those drops are what I'm looking for. For deeper water, I'm not just going to be throwing it to the bowl and hope for the best. Can you catch them like that? Yeah, totally. Especially this time of year, if the bass that aren't moving that good. But getting them to bite sometimes can be a pain. That's why I'm covering water and I'm searching for active, looking to feed fish, even this time of year. So, just look for something with a drop, whether it's where the water comes in, or if it's a jut out area, or maybe there's a dock on your pond that comes out. Typically that's going to be a good area, not necessarily under the dock, but at the end of the dock. I'm going to stay in a spot more like 10-15 minutes, you know what I mean? Unless if it doesn't feel great. But I'm still going to cover water, I'm still going to move around. I'm going to try to find the key areas by getting a bite and then working from there. So that is a big thing. We'll start with that. Searching. Okay, I'm going to throw a couple different search baits. Now, in my video a couple weeks ago, I talked about fishing the northwest side of a lake this time of year. That is because the water's going to warm up faster. It's going to be a lot warmer than the rest of the lake. Things like that. Same goes with a pond. I am typically going to start in that northwest corner, unless if you can't access that northwest side, but generally stay around that area. That's because the sun is beating down on that spot since it rises and pretty much all day. Okay, and then also it's protected from the north wind. North wind in cold water can shut down a bite like nothing. And also it sucks because it's freaking cold. All that cold north wind can shut down a pond so quick, it's crazy. So, typically, north side, northwest corner specifically, but that north side is going to be a lot better, typically. Alright, but I'm going to start with search baits. I'm going to start searching first, even this time of year. My number one search bait this time of year, no matter what I'm doing, if I'm in a pond or on a lake, whether I'm on the boat, on the kayak, or bank fishing, or whatever, my number one search bait I'm going to use is a spinnerbait. Spinnerbaits are so good this time of year. As far as types of spinnerbaits, this is a Booyah. Brands are kind of whatever, but double Colorado blade this time of year. Double Colorado blade. A single can be okay as well. I will fish them as well, but typically double Colorado blade, that extra thump. And I am slow rolling this thing. That's why I like the Colorado blade. You slow roll it, it still has some flash to it, but it's making that thump more than anything. When you're using willow leaf blades, slow rolling isn't that great. The blade isn't flashing that hard. It's not making a thump. That's the thing with willow blades. But it's not making as much flash. It just really kind of is a detriment to that type of spinnerbait. Slow rolling, just kind of fishing it slow. Keeping it kind of, just keeping it on the bottom. Ticking off stuff, logs, sticks. Maybe in the little sparse grass that might be starting to grow, or the dead grass that has died and is just laying there. Things like that. And what I am doing as soon as I get to a pond is I am fan casting. I am starting on parallel with my banks, best I can, obviously, and I'm going to just pick a side, typically whatever side looks better, and make my first cast there. Slow roll that spinnerbait, a little further out, slow roll that spinnerbait, a little further out, slow roll that spinnerbait, all the way across, and then hit that. I'm going to do that at least 1-2 times. You know, I'll typically, if the spot looks really juicy, or especially if I'm on that north side, then I'll just keep kind of doing it a little bit, because obviously you're not going to get a bite on every cast. As far as colors too on this spinnerbait, white and chartreuse is typically what I go with on spinnerbaits. In ponds though, bluegill colors can be great. I do fish a lot of bluegill colors, but I've talked about this as well. More imitating bluegills, just go with a darker color, not really a white. I like to throw black with Colorado blade as well in ponds, just something darker to kind of more imitate those bluegill, but they're still going to hit a white and chartreuse too. I mean, they just are. Half-ounce spinnerbait too. I pretty much always throw a half-ounce. That's if I'm really slow rolling it real deep on deep ledges and stuff, which is not what we're talking about right now. But in a pond, you can't go wrong with a half-ounce, really. Next thing, with that spinnerbait as well, you can kind of find the bottom composition of the pond. I'm going to be looking for harder bottom. Rocks, I've talked about this before as well. Dams are great. It's going to be warmer there. Bass are going to be more active, more likely to bite. There's going to be more bait fish, more bass there to be in that warmer water. And they're going to be more active too. So it's always a great thing to do. But with that spinnerbait, if you don't have a dam, if it's just a pond, whatever, if there's not a rock dam on that pond, then yeah, slow rolling that spinnerbait, feeling for harder bottoms. You start ticking on some sticks or ticking on some sand or rock, you can feel it. That's typically good area. Another thing I like to do for when I feel that harder bottom or just to find it, can't go wrong with a jig. Just dragging a jig. Typically in ponds, just the way they're set up, I mean a lot more muddy bottoms and things, I'm not really going to go with a football head jig, because a lot of times the football head jig, because they're made to just stay down and stuff, when you do get into mud, it just more wants to dig into the mud. So I more typically go with like a flip-in jig, but maybe like an archy head style flip-in jig, where it will sit up when it's being dragged, but also it has a tendency, because they're like this, you know, your line tie is more bent. It doesn't have a tendency to dig into that mud when you hit softer bottom. But really, I want to stay in that hard bottom area, rocks, that sand, things like that, and just slowly drag it. Maybe every once in a while just kind of pick it up a little bit to get that mud or whatever might have been getting on there, dead grass or whatever, kind of pop that off of there. But still, just keeping it really slow. You can use that as a search bait. Next, and actually this one is all wrapped up, I'm not going to take it out. Don't feel like grabbing another one. I'll just throw up a picture. But shallow jerkbaits. Jerkbaits are great in cold water. Jerkbaits can be great year round, but especially in cold water, they can really be good. But typically, ponds are shallow. There's a lot of stuff in the bottom. Like a lot of ponds I fish for sure have sticks all in the bottom. It can be bad. You get a jerkbait caught pretty easy if you're not fishing the right jerkbait. So shallow running jerkbait, something that goes 3 to 5 feet, possibly. Typically, yeah, 3 to 5 feet, and you're just slowly taking that thing. You want to just stay in that middle water column there. Change the depth by your line. I mean, you can go to heavy mono and keep that thing in like 2 feet of water, or 1 even, just barely get it down there. You know what I mean? So that's a big thing. Obviously, I don't recommend it if there's lots of sticks and laydowns and things like that. It just kind of sucks in a pond to be hung up all the time. So, but I will throw up some shallow diving jerkbaits that I like to use. Obviously, everything's going to be in the description as well. So, alright, so that's 3 rods. Typically, I'm carrying 3 or 4 rods. Lastly, will be my spinning rod. And what it's going to have on it is just a weightless stick bait. Either wacky rigged or Texas rigged, depending on the cover. If there are lots of dead grass, there are lots of sticks you're fishing around, A wacky rig will get caught a lot. So even the ones with the weed guards and stuff, I don't really like the weed guards on those things a lot of times. So a weightless Texas rig will probably be better. I typically like the Texas rig more anyway, but wacky rig can be killer this time of year. I'm not going to deny it. So this is really the only time I'm going to be throwing a wacky rig instead of a weightless Texas rig. Easy peasy. Light line. You're just letting that thing fall. Casting out there on the spinning rod. It's weightless, so it's going to just slowly fall. And then you're just going to pick it up and just slowly let it fall. If I'm really struggling and I think there's fish there, or I've caught one but it's been a while, whatever, I know they're there, the cover's right, all that stuff, you can start catching them on that weightless stick bait. Stick bait's obviously red beard bass baits. But yeah, that thing's made specifically pretty much for this time of year. It's made to fall even slower. I've talked about it before. Last tip would be, don't think you got to get there first thing in the morning. If you're like me, I like to be like the first one on the lake or the pond or whatever. I get up early and I go. This time of year I don't, number one, because it's too freaking cold in the morning, but also this time of year, once the sun gets high and starts warming that water more, those fish are going to get more active actually. So really this is the time of year where I like fishing midday. I won't get out there until 10, 11 and stay until 2 or 3 or whatever. Typically I don't fish ponds very long either. But you know what I mean. So that's kind of a last little tip, is don't think you got to be there early in the morning and stuff, because you're freezing. Why do it? Trust me, the best time is going to be around that later morning, early afternoon time, really. Anyway, that's it. Any more questions, just comment them. And links will be in the description, obviously. And let's just get warmed up, please. And I'll see you guys on the next one.